So I'm actually looking at a different list than you. Can you run down your bullet points there real quick?
Intro, plugs. What kind of replayability keeps us coming back to the games we like?
What keeps us coming back to games? Those pointy boobs. And
Pointy boobs!
Those Duke Nukem 64 titty tassels.
I remember you shot one of them, the alien pop. I was like, hey!
Why am I still horny? Hey, what's up, Couch Potatoes? I'm Dustin.
I'm Corey.
And we are the Couch Play Cousins. And this episode, we're going to be talking about replayability and sort of what makes a game replayable. Right?
Absolutely, I think so. And, I think it'd be a good content piece because I've played a shit ton of games that I've had to grind my face off for. So,
yeah,
a lot to talk about.
And to go along with this, we are drinking Sam Adams Cold Snap.
We went to beer, guys.
Yeah, we switched it up to beer.
And they said we couldn't change.
Cold Snap, I could drink this all day. This is replayable beer.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
It works.
It's a good repeat.
Okay, so replayability. Let's kick it off with what makes a game replay. Actually, first, let's distinguish something here because I feel like the first thing I think of when somebody says replayability, I'm like, my mind immediately thinks somebody's answer would be like multiplayer games.
Yeah.
And I don't want to focus on that, right? Because I think multiplayer and likewise like simulation games and stuff, like that's kind of like cop-out answers, right? Because of course multiplayer's replayability, like you're going to come back to, that's what the game is.
Oh, yeah, the whole point of it is basically to bring you back to play with your friends. But
Right.
I think there's tons of ways games could have replayability, whether multiplayer or not.
But the multiplayer aspect is like multiplayer's always been you play the game until the next one comes out.
Yeah.
So like I'd almost argue that that's a point against the multiplayer. And then Sims games are sort of the same way because simulation games and multiplayer, there's no end game, there's no resolution to that.
No, there's tons of games. I think saying multiplayer is too generalized because there's tons of MMORPGs that have a shit ton of replayability.
Yeah.
And like World of Warcraft, for instance, that game absorbs people's fucking lives due to the replayability of it. So I think it should seem like multiplayer, like that aspect of things, like match based maybe or stuff like that maybe. But I think there's a ton of like MMORPGs and like things like that.
Well, I think multiplayer itself is a replayable asset that games can use. Like single player games can have a multiplayer element to them to add to the replayability factor. But I still think replayability in it of itself is somewhat of a cop-out answer for what makes a game replayable. And simulation games are the same.
Yeah.
So that being said, I mean, I'm sure other things will come up, but like I'm almost like looking at this through the lens of like single player experiences and how those become replayable. So, I mean, go ahead, start it off. What do you think makes a game replayable?
Well, and to be honest, like most of my games that I think are replayable have to involve some kind of power curve or customization to them. Something you can tinker with. It's more about like your character grows throughout the game, increasing power, and like your traditional like RPGs have character classes and stuff like that, which gives you like a reason, I think, to go back in and try the game again as like a mage, or go back in and try a game as, etc.
So different character classes.
And or just different ways of customizing. If a game has like hybrid classes, where it just gives you a ton of tinkering options of doing whatever you want, and like you play the game through once as this melee tanky person, go, you know what, I want to try a different hybrid class of something different because I saw so-and-so player try that and it looks really cool.
Yeah, so like something like Skyrim. Yeah. You know, like you maybe one time you want to be a mage and another time you want to be more like warrior, like, like just
like
brawler.
An archer or brawler.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely think like player choice and character classes as well as like your customization, that stuff usually goes hand in hand with like, like appearance and everything. Like I definitely think that factors into replayability. What about like something like difficulty levels? Right?
Yeah.
Like, because some games do that, right? Like, you like, there's, your standard easy, medium, and hard. And like, easy's like, do you want to focus on the story? And then they got like medium, which is like, all right, you're just playing this game like any normal Joe. Yeah. And then hard's like, all right, motherfucker.
It's like, so you want to get your face slammed into the ground, I see.
You like pain, do you? But then a lot of times, if you beat the game on like a hard mode or maybe even a normal, sometimes they'll even be like an
hard plus.
Yeah, an unlockable.
It's like, so you weren't fucked enough last time, huh? We brought the spiked version of this.
like then there's like easy, medium, hard ass rape.
Yeah.
But I think that does, because I know that there was like wasn't there, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there like additional difficulties? Maybe there wasn't, but I know like as I went through like something like the Uncharted series, I mean the story was one thing, but beyond that, like I kind of wanted to go through and get all the collectibles, but then I actually, after I beat it on normal, I just wanted to try to beat it on hard. So that was definitely something that
when I think of like leveling difficulties, one of the first games I think of is like Halo Combat Evolved, or is like easy, medium, hard, legendary, and I think there's like one legendary plus or something like that.
Yeah.
And like there's like 5 or 6 different difficulty settings that you could go your way through.
Yeah.
And chance your luck.
And then, like, once you beat Legendary Plus, it's like no game ever presents you a challenge.
Exactly. The grunts are like murdering you and slaughtering you in the game. But I think you hit something on there. A good point where people completionists. Some people are completionists.
Yeah.
And I think that adds to replayability. They go through a game once for, I think, the enjoyment of it, and then they'll actually replay the game again because they enjoyed the game the first time so much. They're like, okay, I want to get all the trophies now. I know plenty of people that want to get all the trophies in like 100% the game. It's almost kind of like a nod to the game of saying, I like this game so much that I'm going to give it like one really good go.
Yeah,
and get the full like completionist 100%. And I do see that.
It's funny you bring up trophies, because like I've always shat on trophies, because like to me I've never felt obligated ever in a video game to get the trophies, because to me like there's no tangible value to a trophy. It's sort of just like some dweeb was sitting in a room typing up, I don't know, get 50 kills with a headshot with a pistol. Like, you know, like they're just coming up with I don't know, like just sneak around every enemy, like. You know, like, and it was never like, it never felt like it was absolutely necessary to the game. Like, I always targeted like sort of in-game challenges rather than the trophies. I just never gave two shits about trophies.
Like, and I fared better whenever the trophies were tied to like in-game currency, or like there was a reward system.
Well, didn't Sony talk about at one point, and maybe they already did this, maybe I missed the boat, but like, didn't they at one point say that you could hand in trophies for actual PlayStation Store money?
Well, if I'm correct, actually, Steam, you get Steam cards for doing certain things in games, and you can sell them for some sort of currency in the game. But yeah, I don't know. I've never sold one yet, but it's kind of that concept, I guess, which you kind of, you know, motivate you to get more games, spend more money, sell them. Yeah. But yeah, I think like I said, there's that whole completionist side of replayability that I didn't want to leave out, because I personally know a couple people that, like I said, if it's only like if they like the game, and if they like, but you know, people playing Persona, I've seen people play it twice, which is a really long fucking game.
Yeah, well, that comes. I think a little bit of that comes down to like story, and well, Persona has a lot of different just. You kind of do anything that you want to. You can kind of create an identity in that game, and again, that kind of comes down to player choice a little bit. But that's another thing. Like, I think like it really boils down to like the fun factor, the stories, and especially the pacing of a game. As a matter of fact, like when I think replayability, my mind almost immediately goes to like thinking about like speed running games, and that's like those are sort of the pinnacles of like what I see as a replayable game, the things that everyone's playing a million times over and trying to beat their records on. Well, that's usually a good indication of like game pace.
If you look at games like, he's gonna hate that I bring it up, but Destiny. Why was Destiny so replayable for you?
So many things that I want to say about that, but go on.
Well, like,
I'll sit here and
look at Destiny. It's like multiple replayability facets.
That's the new DLC, by the way, the Torment of Dustin.
Yeah, you have to. First of all, I think a game needs to have a hook to it, whether it's a storyline or like really awesome mechanics. It's the bait, it's the carrot on the stick for replayability. And that's what draws you in. So I think, like with Destiny, they had really good mechanics. The storyline wasn't good. Anyone who says the storyline in Destiny was good is like maybe one or two of the expansions, maybe. but they weren't that good, you know?
Yeah.
So its root of the game was the mechanics, I think. And that's what kept people coming back. But then it was the arbitrary go do da 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 bounty da 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 get the thorn. And then you get to use the thorn to then abuse new players in the game in PvP. You know, it's like that beaten child syndrome where they beat me with the thorn, so I'm gonna go get it now and proceed to beat others with it. You know, PvP I think factors into replayability. Because some guy comes up and like Hulk smashes your nuts with some gun in a video game, and you're like, "Fuck! What was that gun? He couldn't have been that good." Or at least you try and tell yourself that, and then you proceed to go and try to find that gun.
Well, so okay, that's dangerously encroaching into the multiplayer aspect, though, in which, of course, you're going to replay multiplayer. Of course, you're going to come back to that. Yeah. But I do think I see the silver lining. What you're talking about there, it's the you saw a gun which inspires you to play the main game.
Exactly. So, yeah, it's the pursuant. Like I said, it's the pursuant of seeing the power curve thing. You encountered something that you thought was cool, usually in the multiplayer lens, but then that wanted you to go back into the game itself to play out the game's content to then get that weapon, to then bring it back into that PvP arena and wash, rinse, and repeat. That's where I think Destiny and its mechanics had kind of shined when it came to replayability. And that's why I kept drawing you back in.
You know, it's almost like a shameful way to entice replayability, right? Because I'm sure that there's good versions to it, but I would say that that's an example of like bad grinding, bad carrot and stick.
Destiny had like a carrot, but it was on the longest fucking stick, and when you got the carrot, it proceeded to beat you with the stick afterwards mercilessly.
Yeah,
with the nerfs of the carrot you just got. Yep. You know, it's like, oh, you got the carrot, now the carrot's garbage, and we hit you with the stick now.
Yeah. See, Destiny, like now you just ruined this podcast. I'm just depressed now. What about like another thing I think heavily affects replayability is game length.
True.
I mean, if a game takes me like 100 hours to complete, I'm probably not going to return to that, at least not for quite some time.
You got a good point there, because I played The Witcher and I dumped, I think, like close to 100 into that. I remember like hitting the final part of the game and it's like, I'm never replaying this game in its entirety ever over again. I'm sure there's people out there that are going to hear me and go, "Oh, I played it like 5 times." Like, well, good for you.
Yeah.
But like, even though I thought it was a decent game for its time, like there was no way I could like replay that game again. And I wasn't even like a completionist person. I was just kind of like meandering through fucking Skellige collecting Gwent cards and, stabbing monsters in the face. I wasn't really like super dedicated to getting all the content out of the game.
Well, actually, it's funny because since we're talking about game length, I guess this kind of bleeds into like a lot of these games being open world now. And I think it's a difference between, like the story and the pacing in an open world game versus like the exploration value. Like, even if you were to replay the game, how would you replay it? You know, like, would you replay it with that same magic and love and freedom? Or would you just sort of like run through the game? Because again, like talking about game length, like that starts to build up. But like, so I'm going to challenge something like The Witcher, or even I'll go back to Skyrim.
Yeah.
Right. Because I like Skyrim. All right. I think Skyrim's a great game. I mean, even still to this day, there's a lot of revolutionary aspects.
There were released how many versions of the freaking thing?
Yeah. Well, that's the Bethesda's greed. But I think like a game like that, like it has a lot of replayability factors and you can kind of be what you want. And you can try different classes. And so it brought people back for multiple replays over and over. But then there's some people that stay with the game instead of replaying it. They just prolong it for like 1,000 hours. And then at that point, it's like, I can't imagine playing a game for another 1,000 hours. How can you even get to that mental state of, oh, let me play that game again? It's like way too long.
It's like a super mega completionist.
But, and I also want to kind of like point to another game that I've never talked about ever.
Oh,
Breath of the Wild. Yeah, that was a joke.
I was going to say.
Yeah, you got too excited.
New content? What?
No, but like a game like that where like it's an open world game and it's the first open world game where I actually did not feel overwhelmed. Like the time that I spent in it, it was time that I just wanted to spend in it. But I think about like I thought about that the other day, like if I were to replay that game, I wouldn't do obviously what I did the first time, which is go through, every nook and cranny on the map, because at that point, like it'd lose some of that anyway. But like I would maybe try more of the speedrun route, or try the dungeons in different orders.
Find like ways of cheesing it or whatever.
Yeah, but like, because the way that game's structured is you could spend 100 hours in it, or you could spend like 10 hours in it. Like it's really up to you. It kind of harkens back to like the freedom and openness that a game has.
I think you're right there, and I think open world games, like, they have to heavily rely on pacing, I think, to not like overwhelm you. Right. And you're not getting like attacked by a monster every couple seconds, and you can kind of explore a little bit, but it also can't be too barren where you're like,
yeah, of course. And again, I think that comes with a lot of speedrun things too. That, I mean, even think about, like, when you talk about pacing, like, what are some of the most common speedrun games you see out of there? I mean, like,
platformers,
of course, platformers.
Yeah.
And platformers tend to have really great pacings. Mm-hmm. Like, and then even like 3D, the old school 3D Zeldas. There's tons of speedruns in that, because those games had incredible pacing. Mm-hmm. And you have to mix that, I think, with the fun mechanics.
Yeah.
And even exploits. Like, I think if a game has exploits, that actually encourages people to
I think so too.
Like, even thinking about, Voldemort or Destiny, like going back. And the reason I kept going back to the same raids was because I heard of new exploits, and I wanted, it basically gave me a new way to experience the same thing.
The only reason you went back to Destiny is because you never got the Gouger Horn.
God.
I just won it once.
Oh, that takes me to a dark place.
But yeah, I remember cheesing certain parts of the raids and be like, oh, that's funny. Just the fact that you could like 2-man the raid eventually, or a single person to raid.
Yeah, I think exploits is definitely a category which helps make a game replayable, believe it or not. There's a whole community of people that, especially in the speedrunner category, that just chase those exploits.
Called Games Done Quick or something like that. Mm-hmm. And it's just seeing the stuff they can do. Like, I watched, I think, a Spyro one where they like, hop over half the game, and you're like, what the fuck? And you're like glitching and flying through. It's like, but yeah, it's just funny, the stuff you can find in these games due to, like, I'd say fragile coding, you could say.
Yeah. Another thing that I think can drastically affect replayability too, mechanics.
Yeah.
There are some games that have like so many layers of mechanics and customization. And admittedly, you're more of a customization person than I am. So like, I'm not super like in love with the idea of too much customization, because it feels very overwhelming. But if you apply that to like, second and third run-throughs of a game, like all the time and energy you spend customizing something to perfection, the idea of then starting from scratch, where you have to like almost re-unlock, versus a game that might have more simplistic mechanics, again, which is why I think platformers are so popular in the speedruns, but also the replayability factor, because they're very simple.
I think you kind of hit like some of my joys, like right in the head there, where like customization, and like I love to tinker, even if it's like stat value tinkering, putting like speed here or something like that. But the more I can tinker and then apply those to baseline mechanics. Let's say we're like a brawler game or a fighter game. If I can change armor values, or, speed, or I love those things, that makes games replayable for me, because it really makes you feel like the character's your own character. Slap on some fun customization there.
What's can I interject and say, what's a game that you can think of at the top of your head that maybe you play now or played in the past that was very customization heavy? Can you just name one?
I played a lot of MechWarrior Online. It's kind of a dead game now.
Yeah.
But that's a perfect game, actually, because there's different chassis, I guess you could say, for these mechs, and you have to put different engines in them, armor and everything.
So let's imagine for a second.
Yeah.
Let's say you lost your entire save files on MechWarrior Online.
Yes.
Would you go back and play through that game again and try to unlock all those things?
Fun thing is, I actually have lost 1 or 2 accounts on it, so it makes it kind of funny.
Oh shit!
Yeah, no, it's fun. Like, I've lost
that
like
backfired in my face.
No. Like, I've lost 1 or 2 accounts, and the whole thing I think that survived and made me come back to it was the in-game economy was very forgiving. You through your skill in the game, you would get reimbursed and you could quickly catch up on what you lost over maybe a month or so. And the game mechanics and stuff were interesting enough that it brought me back. So yeah, a couple times, yeah. So I guess a game can survive if you lose a pretty heavy account.
Well, shit. Yeah. That backfired because I was expecting that to be like a solid
No. Like at first I was like, but I was like, no, I realized I restarted like 2 accounts and I still went back to it. So I guess like really in the end of the day, like if the mechanics are good enough.
Yeah. Because I think of a game like Witcher and I think, God, would I really want to go back and re-level up all these different materials and weapons and magic? And would I want to re-go through all of that stuff? And my immediate thought and answer is just like, no, I like that's so exhausting.
I think what gets me in the end is I love games that have a power curve and customization to them, and storyline based games that then I can then take that stuff and then fuck with people with. Yeah, it's a weird like enjoyment of mine.
I can enjoy that. Yeah. I can, even though customization is not 100% always something I'm in love with, I can still enjoy it the first time. But like having to repeat it, the replayability, like that. Yeah. That's just too much for my mind. Like, well, I don't know. I just feel like, again, I just think about some, and you know what? Here's an example. A lot of people, this game's kind of semi-controversial in the RPG world. Final Fantasy X. It's actually one of my favorite Final Fantasy games, and it's actually, in my opinion, I find that to be the most replayable Final Fantasy.
Not 7.
No, Final Fantasy 7 is my favorite Final Fantasy.
I'm all fucking confused now.
Final Fantasy X is probably my second favorite, even though that's going to enrage all the FF6 fans out there.
It's because the Blitzball, isn't it? It's the fucking
I do love Blitzball. It's so stupid, but I love it.
Blitzball in it. That was the customization for me in that game, was recruiting different players.
Yeah. But the thing about it is, like, the path, unless you like do the new like version of the sphere grid that they like the original sphere grid, like there was really no customization, like not much to it. Like, yes, you could technically use like friend spheres and all this kind of stuff, but for the most part, you just sort of like were on this same generic path, and you wanted the same generic spells because you needed Yuna to get all the the healing stuff, and you needed Lulu to get all the black magic, Fire-Aga, and all those spells. So you were kind of fighting your way through. Although it looked like a very customizable sphere grid, it was actually very linear.
Exactly.
As opposed to all the other Final Fantasy games where it's kind of like you make this character whatever you want them to be. Here's a persuasive path for them to go, but you really kind of have more flexibility and freedom.
I agree. It was that illusion of choice, I guess. Yeah. It's like you're like, this person's obviously the healer.
But for that same reason, it's so easy for me to go back to that game because it's not it's not like something I have to think about. Like it's like it's very linear, and I think linearity offers up a lot of replayability to a certain degree because you don't, as long as it has pacing. That's what we're talking about. But like, it's just so much easier to go back through the motions than to have to rediscover something. But at the same time, like this is in tandem with the idea that like, yes, player choice and different classes, yes, add to replayability. But I also think there's something to say about the linearity of something.
I see your Final Fantasy X, and I raise you Final Fantasy X-2.
Oh God, don't do that. That game was just the worst. I watched one of my
friends playing that game on Steam.
We're watching our
and I was like,
Twitter
is that the
followers
game where
drop
they just
by the
slapped
minute.
bikinis on them and they were like, here you go.
Yeah.
Like, now they're pop singers.
Waifu the game.
Yeah. There's always a market. There's always a market.
That game was trash. There were some good elements to it, but it was trash.
And it's funny that like it popped up as a cult classic, and I was like, "What the fuck happened in my absence?"
That always happens with those types of games. But that's an example of like, well, Final Fantasy X, the original anyway, is a great example of when you keep the mechanics light. It just adds a whole lot of replayability factor, especially if you just want to go back to something simple. But I think that this also kind of blends into how much nostalgia plays into replayability. Because most of the games that I replay, they're older games that I haven't played since I was younger.
I guess that's a good question, because it's like, what constitutes replayability? Because we played these games as a kid. Fast forward 10 years, maybe 20, and then we replayed them again. Is playing a game replaying a game after a couple of decades considered replayability? You know what I mean? Or is it more just the age that we're at, where like time to replay? You know what I mean?
Yep.
So that's a good question. Where I see nostalgia as a reason to replay, but I'm not sure if it is replayability.
True. Yeah, I guess that's a good point.
Yeah, fuck you. Got him, guys. I finally got him.
I'm just losing all these battles on this one. This is not my subject. Goodbye. I'll just, you know what? You take the rest of this episode. I'm going to bed. So here's another one. Mods.
Okay.
So like, because we talked a little bit about
people love fucking mods.
Well, we talked about Skyrim.
Mm-hmm.
And the modding community in Skyrim is hilarious. It's just amazing.
I watched a modding video where someone modded like 1,000 children with small knives, and then they had them attack a dragon, and the dragon's like picking them, all these children up and just throwing
mods
them.
Are almost like little mini DLCs.
They are. They're hilarious.
Unofficial ones. But like I one of my favorite ones was when they turned the dragon into Thomas the Train. And it was like those things bring you back, right? Because it's like you're experiencing the same game, but through a different lens. Like it's so simple, yet it gives you enough of a reason to actually replay something that's even as massive as something.
For Resident Evil 2, I saw a bunch of mods for Mr. X. One was like a Bob Ross one where he has like this big afro and he comes crashing through the wall. The other one, he's got like a fucking thong on and he's like shredded. And he's just
the Untitled Goose Game one where he's the goose.
Really?
And he's still got the top hat on and everything.
Yeah. Oh, that would be hilarious. Which is a goose. Mm-hmm. I know you can modify yourself to be a big brick of tofu.
That's actually official.
Really?
Like that was like the Resident Evil team, the Capcom team that like built that into the because when they were like playtesting it, because it harkens back to like an inside joke that was in the original game, like in the original like development process of the original game.
Well, that's so funny because your health meter was like how much chunks of tofu got ripped off of you.
It's weird. Every time you say tofu, I fart. I don't know if the mic's picking it up.
It's very gassy food. It's a very gassy food.
So yeah, mods I think are a good one too, but and then you have things like, you know, like the up and coming like maker games. You know, like Dreams, you know, is obviously the new crave that's going around right now, right? Like, cuz those are games that are basically they're unlimited games.
Yeah, the dream surfing in that game. I think is going to be a big content source generator. And I'm already starting to see, starting to see kind of the limitations of the engine.
Sure.
But still a lot of content's funny as fuck. Yeah. Like the remakes and things like that, or like I don't know, some of the stuff they can do is pretty funny.
Yeah, well, I'm sure some of the limitations too will also come with the fact that it's still so new, and I'm sure like as people figure it out and then they do updates and stuff, like it could be a legitimate platform, but yeah, that's the type of game that like it's almost like it's not really a game itself individually, but it's an endless sea of games, just like RPG Maker, Mario Maker, all those.
Mario Maker, yeah.
Yep. And that's a game that like people still like up until the recent Mario Maker 2 came out, and I'm sure that they probably still do, but returned to the original Mario Maker on Wii up until recently, because it's just the constant content being made.
People don't know we're kind of video game developers ourselves. Back when we were younger with RPG Maker, we made some pretty decent games. I made that one, the D-Day game. Yeah, where the guys running up the thing and all those guys were exploding around them.
Yeah, that was back on because we made them on those old PS2 versions. You could actually create custom sprites and stuff. You could do that on a computer.
I mean, guys who exploded.
we made the baby that was on a quest to get weed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very productive in our childhood days.
We dumped like tons of hours into that. I remember that.
So yeah, no, I think that that's something to look at too, because you are talking about like you can get some full length experiences inside of these games. So it's not to write it off as like you're not just getting bite sized. Sometimes you're getting a full fledged game. So that's cool. That's a new thing that's sort of opening up today.
I agree.
You know, we talked a little bit about incentives. Trophies, which, you know, I explain that like what other like are there other incentives that like
when you say incentives to me, like the first thing comes to mind, it's kind of like gaming on the phone, and for some reason I think about incentives like, oh, play this so many things and then we'll incentivize you with this, or buy this and we'll incentivize you with that. Like I think of incentive as almost kind of like that really dirty carrot and stick. Maybe it's just the word incentive, where replayability is more like the addiction side of it.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I went down that road, but like I may just in the word incentive. I think of incentive as something.
Well, no, I mean, because you know, we said it earlier, but like the carrot and stick, you know, the incentives there, like there's good and there's bad. So I guess we kind of already rummaged through this a little bit, but yeah, no, I mean DLC could also probably be considered, you know, an incentive, like to come back and replay a game, like even like because there's some DLC that actually adds new adventures, and there's other DLCs that like just add something new, whether it's a new difficulty, whether it's like a new, like I don't know, maybe they mirror the entire like map or something.
Look at Persona 5. They're coming out with a new female character, and they're also coming out with, I think, more of those daemons, or I'm not sure what they're called in the game. I don't know, but apparently they're recreating the game, not from the ground up, but enough where it includes this new character and a bunch of other Fortnite. They're always releasing new guns, new maps.
Again,
still
multiplayer. I mean, I still come back to that. Like, that's kind of what multiplayer does. Like, whenever the next Fortnite comes out, like if they did like a full-fledged Fortnite sequel, Fortnite would be obsolete.
No, I get what you're saying though, but yeah, content enhancing patches. I know with Breath of the Wild they added like a motorcycle or something like that too.
Yeah, they did like a couple expansion passes, which added some extra dungeons. That definitely. I waited to beat the main game until all that DLC came out because I wanted to do everything before the end game boss. But yeah, no, like DLC can definitely bring you back in, and even think of a game like. I mean, I know it's multiplayer, so I don't want to like cop out, but like game like Smash Brothers, like with all the new characters they're adding into it. So like if you're not somebody that regularly plays the game,
playing with other players,
like, Banjo-Kazooie's now in it. Now I kind of want to go play it again.
Yeah, the
so
potted plant, like the new character.
Yep.
Yeah, arena-based fighters are always Mortal Kombat. Perfect fucking example. Every Mortal Kombat I think releases like 4 or 5 characters like Jason Voorhees and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you know that's the replayability.
Yeah, the unlockables.
Yeah.
And that's actually one of the I think Smash Brothers is probably like the only game that I've in-game 100%ed like from the challenges that are in there, because they not only are there unlockables, but there's like a whole slew of like spelled out do this and you'll unlock something. So like I went through and I managed to do all those, and that's kept me playing that game for forever.
Yeah, the unlockables are good, especially whenever they're a little bit handholdy, and it's like you go from one thing to the next. Whenever, like I feel like whenever it becomes a little bit like ambiguous, that's when I'm kind of like I hate that whole fishing for what I'm supposed to be doing next.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I do think Smash is really good with the unlockables. It really lets you know like exactly what to do next to do, and that really enhanced the replayability a lot. And combined with the new characters, But I think they're finally finishing up on those characters, aren't they? Are they going to keep doing
6 more?
6 more?
6 more, and then that's it.
Okay.
It's still pretty crazy.
Yeah,
it's gonna be like almost 90 characters in total. It'll be like 86 characters total.
Yeah.
So it really does come down to the mechanics for me when it comes to replayability. I mean, if I don't like a game's controls, that's it.
Oh yeah.
And
that's like the executioner of games.
And we've talked about that personally before, but as much as, you know, you can hate on me for it, like I did not care so much for The Witcher. I thought the story and the lore and everything was amazing, and Gwent was fucking fantastic.
It's like Gwent Simulator.
Yeah, but the controls in that game threw me off, and I never want to go back to it because of those controls. But honestly, like I'm not much of a. I'm more of the nostalgic replayer. Replayer. I usually, if I replay a game, it's usually something that's from my childhood or something from many, many, many years ago. And it's usually even after like a re-release. So like I don't actually replay a lot of games. I'm more interested in playing sequels and follow-ups, and I'm more interested in new variations of a game that I love.
So speaking of like new games, again, maybe that's a good segue of, are there any new games that have kind of poked their heads out that might, and I know this is all conjecture now, going into the conjecture zone. What games do you think might have some interesting replayability, or look like they might have some interesting mechanics that might give you some replayability?
Ones that are coming out.
They are not out yet, so we're going straight conjecture
potentially here. Cyberpunk.
That's the first one that came to my mind.
Yeah. Halo Infinite.
Yeah.
So those are definitely some big hitters. You know, if it, depending on the difficulty and the game length, maybe even something like Last of Us 2, the second one. And then of course, just like Breath of the Wild now, maybe Breath of the Wild 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can see having some replayability factors. Okay. But again, it really comes down to depending on like games that broke our hearts. Yeah. Like hopefully, like, you know, if they get it right.
You, Division, you piece of shit.
And I'm also like, like even when it comes to, if I can step back there for a moment while I'm thinking about this and having time for it to process, but like asking about game, like replayability, there it goes again.
Puberty, like a level of 9.
I've been dealing with puberty for 20 years, apparently. So I'm more interested in replaying a game with a person that's never experienced the game.
I'm never touching Breath of the Wild. You go fuck yourself.
To see, you're touching it, all right? You're going to touch it because I'm going to make you touch it.
No.
If somebody tuned in right now, they're like, oh. But it's one of those, like, it kind of gives you a new lens. It gives you a chance to kind of re-experience the game for the first time again.
Yeah, I can see the nostalgia bit of that.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the last thing I'll say about my idea of replayability and how I look at it. But
okay.
But yeah, those are the ones that are coming out though. Like,
okay, I'll cap off on a few. You kind of touch base on two of the big ones. I'm actually pretty excited for.
Did I touch second base?
Maybe Kurt. Maybe you're edging on third. So there was Cyberpunk, that web-based decision style of game.
Yep.
That combined with the RPG-based stats and archetypes, I think is going to have a lot of replayability to it. So I'm kind of pretty curious about that one. Halo Infinite's a fucking mystery. It could be anything. It could be anything from an MMO FPS to some open world FPS.
I guess I'm hoping that Halo Infinite is everything that I wanted Destiny to be. If Halo does what Destiny didn't, then I think you'd have like the ultimate game and the ultimate lore and replayability.
I agree. I agree there. And from what I understand, it's coming out this year, correct?
Shrug.
I
don't know. I mean, fuck, they're still trying to get all the fucking Master Chief Collection on PC.
Yeah, it's true. But I think it's a part of the hype piece.
Yeah. I'm excited that they're releasing it multi-platform.
Exactly. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I guess the final one that's coming out is Godfall. Are you familiar with Godfall?
I am. Yeah.
It looks interesting.
It's a slasher.
It's a looter slasher teamwork based game where you play with your friends, and it has fighting mechanics in it.
I almost actually, when they announced that, my mind immediately kind of went to like Warframe.
Kind of, to a certain extent, but I think it's going to be more Warframe. It focuses on a lot more of the gunplay. Where this, I think, is going to be more of the Bloodborne slide fight / dodge parry, but with friends and loot. And I was like, that sounds kind of interesting. That kind of checks.
You just got to get yourself some friends, and you're good to go. Three players. Cool. I'm interested in that. It's PS5, so it might give me incentive to fork out some dough. There's also another one coming out. Beyond Good and Evil 2. We'll see. We've been waiting for that game for feels like 20
gaming.
years. I mean, they're just. Well, is that? I don't even. They don't. Do they even have a time period of a release date yet? Like
for Beyond Good and Evil?
Yeah.
Probably next year, to be honest.
We'll probably
see. I think they're waiting for maybe a new graphics card, maybe PS5, something.
Yeah, maybe. All right, well, that about wraps it up for us. If you want to learn more, if you like what you hear, for some reason, you can go to our website at couchplaycousins.com. There's going to be links for our YouTube channel and everything else, or Twitch, all that shit. And you can also follow us on social media, Twitter at couch_cousins and Facebook at couchplaycousins. And that's about it. Solid ending as usual.
Yeah, always the best.
One of these days I'm going to like sketch something out. Until then, I'm just winging it.
Later, guys.
See ya.
Bye.
Cheers.